So Chapter 5, Configuring Advanced Storage Solutions. In this chapter, we're going to work with storage spaces, configure iSCSI, implement data deduplication, and implement storage replica. Now, storage spaces, that's a feature that provides flexible provisioning of virtual storage, creates volumes for storage pools. A storage pool is a collection of physical disks from which virtual disks and volumes are created, and they're assigned dynamically. Storage spaces can allocate storage by using thin provisioning. Now that provides, or I should say that uses dynamically expanding disks so that you can provision a large volume. We've got storage spaces use the concept of just a bunch of disks, or JBOD. That's two or more disks that appear as a single disk to the OS. We've got disk pooling is a collection of physical disks viewed as a single disk. Data deduplication finds data existing on a volume multiple times and reduces it to a single instance. So we don't want redundancy of the same data. Flexible storage layouts, we've got three options: simple space, mirror space, and parity space. A simple space, we've got a RAID 0 volume. Disk 1 and disk 2, they're separate. Mirrored space, disk 1 and disk 2 are mirrored images of each other, or identical. And then we've got RAID 5, which is 3 or more disks. And we've got parity and RAID level 5. Anything written on one goes on one of the other disks, not necessarily the same one for everything. So you've got storage tiering. It combines the speed of SSDs with the low cost and high capacity of HDDs. You can add SSDs to a storage pool with HDDs, and Windows keeps the most frequently accessed data on the faster SSDs. A storage pool consists of one or more physical disks with unallocated space. Virtual disks, we've talked about them in the past. We'll talk about them in the next chapter as well. Create a virtual disk from storage pools and choose storage layout and provisioning type. Volumes, after you create a virtual disk, you create volumes. Every volume uses the virtual disk storage layout and provisioning type. So here we are in Server Manager, and we're on the storage pools. We go through and determine where the disk is and how we're having it set up. Okay, we can create storage spaces. Now we can do that in PowerShell as well. New storage pool, new volume. New volume commandlet creates a fixed size virtual disk configured as a mirror and formatted with NTFS. You can do the resize partition commandlet to expand the volume. The number of physical disks a virtual disk is using is referred to as a column. To see the number of columns a virtual disk is using, just use this commandlet, get virtual disk, and follow the rest of it on out. So here we are. We can see the PowerShell version of it. We can see the desktop experience version of it. Okay. So to get storage pool, that'll help us repair the storage pool. Or if we want to remove a physical disk, we can use the remove physical disk commandlet. We've got different disk allocation options: automatic, hot spare, and manual. Here we go on desktop experience. We can see the GUI on how we're going to allocate them: automatic, hot spare, and manual. Physical disks, you can use automatically allocated physical disks, or you can manually allocate the physical disk associated with the virtual disk. Okay. So we've got the ability to configure tiered storage. We can do it using PowerShell. We've got the commandlet set physical disk name, media type SSD. We can do it in the GUI using this interface, new virtual disk wizard and the virtual disk name, and lay it out there. All right, after you select the storage layout, provision, and type, you configure the size of the virtual disk and how you want to use the SSDs and HDDs in the tier. So here's the GUI, and we decide how we want it laid out, or how we're going to actually configure it. Now we've got commandlets when it comes to tiering for PowerShell, and here they are listed on the left and the description for each. So we can implement a SAN with iSCSI. Now we call it iSCSI. Now you can set up a SAN with Windows servers by using iSCSI protocol. Now it carries SCSI device commands over an IP network. Two main components in Windows Server 2016 iSCSI SAN solution is the iSCSI target and the iSCSI initiator. Here we've got the target, here we've got the initiator, and here's the shared storage. It could be local or external storage. So we've got block level storage and file level storage. If we're going to configure the iSCSI target, we've got different ways to go about it. Get into it in one of the next ones. Okay. Go in through the GUI. We've got general, discovery domains, and discovery domain sets. Now if we want to configure a data center bridging, we've got data center bridging, or DCB. It's an enhancement to the Ethernet that provides additional features for use in enterprise data centers, in particular where server clustering and SANs are in use. So we've got MPIO, or multipath I/O. Now, it provides fault tolerance for Windows storage networks, including iSCSI SANs. MPIO supports fiber channel, iSCSI, and SAS interfaces, and requires that the server must have at least two interfaces with a connection to the storage network. So here we are with MPIO properties. We can add support for iSCSI or add support for SAS. We can also connect to a target. Now, data deduplication, we've talked about that, and that gets rid of duplication on the drive. So it frees up space by anytime you see redundant data being stored, we'll just get rid of it and it'll have that space open now for us. Common uses for data deduplication is file servers and backup servers, as well as virtualization servers. And we can use the DDP eval.exe to evaluate any volumes or network shares that you specify and find out what's going on when it comes to data deduplication. If we're going to implement data deduplication, go in, set the server role, and it's File and Storage Services, and come into File and iSCSI Services, and you'll see data deduplication. Now, once it's installed, data deduplication must be enabled on the selected volumes. You'll go in from File and Storage Services in the Server Manager, or you can use a PowerShell command line. So here we are going in, setting the data deduplication settings, scheduling them, and here's the commandlets if we were going in as server core. Here we see it taking place in server core and more. Okay, so backing up and restoring with data deduplication. Data deduplication provides features for backup applications to perform optimized backup and restore operations on volumes that have deduplication enabled. Now, a storage replica is a Windows Server feature that provides block-level file replication between storage devices. It's primarily for the purpose of fault tolerance and disaster recovery. Now, think about it along the lines of why we have RAID 5 with parity. Same concept. We've got things stored in multiple locations in case one of the pieces of data or storage facility, storage devices fails. So when it comes to installing and configuring storage replica, minimum requirements: we get 4 gig of RAM on each server, 2 CPU cores, or on virtual machines, 2 virtual processors must be assigned to each server. Servers should be domain members for automatic Kerberos authentication, 1 gigabyte per second network connection. Replication volume must be NTFS or REFS, formatted with GPT partitioning. A log volume with at least 8 gig of free space, NTFS, REFS, or GPT partitioning. An SSD disk is highly recommended for log volume. Both replication volume and log volume on each server must have identical sector sizes. Replication and log volumes cannot be used to store OS components, including the paging file. Now, storage replica can be installed using Server Manager or by PowerShell, and here's your PowerShell commands. Okay. Here we go ahead and run it on out. We've got get SR group. That'll give us a storage replica group. Now, one way of replication is from a source volume to a destination volume. We can remove the SR partnership and set an SR partnership. We've got synchronous replication as well as asynchronous replication. And when it comes to storage spaces, they provide flexible provisioning of virtualized storage by using storage pools. Storage space is a collection of physical disks from which virtual disks and volumes are created and assigned dynamically. Storage spaces use the concept of just a bunch of disks, or JBOD. Windows Server 2016 contains a feature called Enclosure Awareness, in which server spaces can place copies of data on separate enclosures. Tiered storage combines the speed of solid-state drives with the low cost and high capacity of HDDs. Now, a SAN uses high-speed networking technologies to give servers fast access to large amounts of shared disk storage. Data Center Bridging, or DCB, provides additional features for use in enterprise data centers where server clustering and SANs are in use. MPIO, that provides fault tolerance for Windows storage networks, including iSCSI SANs. Storage Replica is a Windows Server feature that provides block-level file replication between storage devices, primarily for fault tolerance and disaster recovery. Data deduplication is a technology utilizing multiple technologies that reduces the amount of storage necessary to store an organization's data. So we'll see you in Chapter 6. Keep up the hard work.